Section 11 of the Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Beth Blakely. The Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4. Translated by Jonathan Scott. Section 11. The Story of the Sisters Who Envied Their Younger Sister. Part 3. Prince Perviz, on the 20th day after his departure, met the same dervish in the same place as his brother Bahman had done before him. He went directly up to him, and after he had saluted, asked him if he could tell him where to find the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the golden water. The dervish urged the same difficulties and remonstrances as he had done to Prince Bahman, telling him that a young gentleman, who very much resembled him, was with him a short time before, that overcome by his importunity and pressing instances, he had shown him the way, given him a guide, and told him how he should act to succeed, but that he had not seen him since, and doubted not but he had shared the same fate as all other adventurers. "Good dervish," answered Prince Perviz, "I know whom you speak of. He was my elder brother, and I am informed of the certainty of his death, but know not the cause." "I can tell you," replied the dervish. "He was changed into a black stone, as all I speak of have been, and you must expect the same transformation, unless you observe more exactly than he has done the advice I gave him, in case you persist in your resolution, which I once more entreat you to renounce." "Dervish," said Prince Perviz, "I cannot sufficiently express how much I am obliged for the concern you take in my life, who am a stranger to you, and have done nothing to deserve your kindness, but I thoroughly considered this enterprise before I undertook it, and I cannot now relinquish it. Therefore, I beg of you to do me the same favor you have done my brother. Perhaps I may have better success in following your directions." "Since I cannot prevail with you," said the dervish, "to give up your obstinate resolution, if my age did not prevent me, and I could stand, I would get up to reach you a bowl I have here, which will show you the way." Without giving the dervish time to say more, the prince alighted from his horse, and went to the dervish, who had taken a bowl out of his bag, in which he had a great many, and gave it him, with the same directions he had given Prince Bahman, and after warning him not to be discouraged by the voices he should hear without seeing anybody, however threatening they might be, but to continue his way up the hill till he saw the cage and bird, he let him depart. Prince Perviz thanked the dervish, and when he had remounted and taken leave, threw the bowl before his horse, and spurring him at the same time followed it. When the bowl came to the bottom of the hill it stopped. The prince alighted, and stood some time to recollect the dervish's directions. He encouraged himself and began to walk up with a resolution to reach the summit, but before he had gone above 6 steps he heard a voice, which seemed to be near, as of a man behind him, saying in an insulting tone, "Stay, rash youth, that I may punish you for your presumption." Upon this affront the prince, forgetting the dervish's advice, clapped his hand upon his sword, drew it, and turned about to revenge himself, but had scarcely time to see that nobody followed him before he and his horse were changed into black stones. In the meantime, the Princess Parizadeh, several times a day after her brother's departure, counted her chaplet. She did not omit it at night, but when she went to bed put it about her neck, and in the morning when she awoke counted over the pearls again to see if they would slide. The day that Prince Perviz was transformed into a stone, she was counting over the pearls as she used to do, when all at once they became immovably fixed, a certain token that the prince her brother was dead. As she had determined what to do in case it should happen so, she lost no time in outward demonstrations of grief, which she concealed as much as possible, but having disguised herself in a man's apparel, armed and equipped, she mounted her horse the next morning, having told her servants she should return in 2 or 3 days, and took the same road her brothers had done. The princess, who had been used to ride on horseback and hunting, supported the fatigue of so long a journey better than most ladies could have done, and as she made the same stages as her brothers, she also met with the dervish on the 20th day. When she came near him, she alighted off her horse, leading him by the bridle, went and sat down by the dervish, and after she had saluted him, said, "Good dervish, give me leave to rest myself, and do me the favor to tell me if you have not heard that there are somewhere in this neighborhood a speaking bird, a singing tree, and golden water." "Princess," answered the dervish, "for so I must call you, since by your voice I know you to be a woman disguised in a man's apparel. I thank you for your compliment, and receive the honor you do me with great pleasure. I know the place well where these things are to be found. But what makes you ask me this question?" "Good dervish," replied the princess, "I have had such a flattering relation of them given to me, that I have a great desire to possess them." "Madam," replied the dervish, "you have been told the truth. These curiosities are more singular and surprising than they have been represented to you, but you have not been made acquainted with the difficulties which must be surmounted in order to obtain them. If you had been fully informed of these, you would not have undertaken so troublesome and dangerous an enterprise. Take my advice, go no farther, return, and do not urge me to contribute towards your ruin." "Good father," said the princess, "I have traveled a great way, and should be sorry to return without executing my design. You talk of difficulties and danger of life, but you do not tell me what those difficulties are, and wherein the danger consists. This is what I desire to know, that I may consider and judge whether I can trust my courage and strength to brave them." The dervish repeated to the princess what he had said to the princes Bahman and Perviz, exaggerating the difficulties of climbing up to the top of the mountain, where she was to make herself mistress of the bird, which would inform her of the singing tree and golden water. He magnified the noise and din of the terrible threatening voices which she would hear on all sides of her, without seeing anybody, and the great number of black stones, alone sufficient to strike terror. He entreated her to reflect that those stones were so many brave gentlemen, so metamorphosed for having omitted to observe the principal condition of success in the perilous undertaking, which was not to look behind them before they had got possession of the cage. When the dervish had done, the princess replied, "By what I comprehend from your discourse, the difficulties of succeeding in this affair are, first, the getting up to the cage without being frightened at the terrible din of voices I shall hear, and secondly, not to look behind me. For this last, I hope I shall be mistress enough of myself to observe it. As to the first, I own that those voices, such as you represent them to be, are capable of striking terror into the most undaunted. But as in all enterprises and dangers, every one may use stratagem. I desire to know of you if I may use any in one of so great importance." "And what stratagem is it you would employ?" said the dervish. "To stop my ears with cotton," answered the princess, "that the voices, however loud and terrible, may make the less impression upon my imagination, and my mind remain free from that disturbance which might cause me to lose the use of my reason." "Princess," replied the dervish, "of all the persons who have addressed themselves to me for information, I do not know that ever one made use of the contrivance you propose. All I know is, that they all perished. If you persist in your design, you may make the experiment. You will be fortunate if it succeeds, but I would advise you not to expose yourself to the danger." "My good father," replied the princess, "nothing can hinder my persisting in my design. I am sure my precaution will succeed, and am resolved to try the experiment. Nothing remains for me but to know which way I must go. I conjure you not to deny me the favor of that information." The dervish exhorted her again for the last time to consider well what she was going to do, but finding her resolute, he took out a bowl, and presenting it to her, said, "Take this bowl, mount your horse again, and when you have thrown it before you, follow it through all its windings till it stops at the bottom of the mountain. There alight and ascend the hill. Go, you know the rest." After the princess had thanked the dervish and taken her leave of him, she mounted her horse, threw the bowl before her, and followed it till it stopped at the foot of the mountain. The princess alighted, stopped her ears with cotton, and after she had well examined the path leading to the summit, began with a moderate pace, and walked up with intrepidity. She heard the voices, and perceived the great service the cotton was to her. The higher she went, the louder and more numerous the voices seemed, but they were not capable of making any impression upon her. She heard a great many affronting speeches, and raillery very disagreeable to a woman, which she only laughed at. "I mind not," she said to herself, "all that can be said, were it worse. I only laugh at them, and shall pursue my way." At last she got so high that she could perceive the cage and the bird, which endeavored with the voices to frighten her, crying in a thundering tone, notwithstanding the smallness of its size, "Retire, fool, and approach no nearer." The princess, encouraged by this object, redoubled her speed, and by effort gained the summit of the mountain, where the ground was level. Then running directly to the cage and clapping her hand upon it, cried, "Bird, I have you, and you shall not escape me." While Parizadeh was pulling the cotton out of her ears, the bird said to her, "Heroic princess, be not angry with me for joining with those who exerted themselves to preserve my liberty. Though in a cage, I was content with my condition. But since I am destined to be a slave, I would rather be yours than any other person's, since you have obtained me so courageously. From this instant I swear inviolable fidelity, and an entire submission to all your commands. I know who you are, you do not, but the time will come when I shall do you essential service, which I hope you will think yourself obliged to me for. As a proof of my sincerity, tell me what you desire, and I am ready to obey you." The princess's joy was the more inexpressible because the conquest she had made had cost her the lives of 2 beloved brothers, and given her more trouble and danger than she could have imagined, notwithstanding what the dervish had represented to her. "Bird," said she, "it was my intention to have told you that I wish for many things which are of importance, but I am overjoyed that you have shown your goodwill and prevented me. I have been told that there is not far off a golden water, the property of which is very wonderful. Before all things, I ask you tell me where it is." The bird showed her the place, which was just by, and she went and filled a little silver flagon which she had brought with her. She returned to the bird and said, "Bird, this is not enough. I want also the singing tree. Tell me where it is." "Turn about," said the bird, "and you will see behind you a wood, where you will find this tree." The princess went into the wood, and by the harmonious concert she heard soon knew the tree among many others, but it was very large and high. She came back to the bird and said to it, "Bird, I have found the singing tree, but I can neither pull it up by the roots nor carry it." The bird replied, "It is not necessary that you should take it up by the roots. It will be sufficient to break off a branch and carry it to plant in your garden. It will take root as soon as it is put into the earth, and in a little time will grow to as fine a tree as that you have seen." When the princess had obtained possession of the 3 things which the devout woman had told her of, and for which she had conceived so great a desire, she said again to the bird, "Bird, what you have yet done for me is not sufficient. You have been the cause of the death of my 2 brothers, who must be among the black stones which I saw as I ascended the mountain. I wish to take them home with me." The bird seemed reluctant to satisfy the princess in this point, and indeed made some difficulty to comply. "Bird," said the princess, "remember you told me that you were my slave. You are so, and your life is in my disposal." "That I cannot deny," answered the bird, "but although what you now ask is more difficult than all the rest, yet I will do it for you. Cast your eyes around," added he, "and look if you can see a little pitcher." "I see it already," said the princess. "Take it then," he said, "and as you descend the mountain, sprinkle a little of the water that is in it upon every black stone." The princess took up the pitcher accordingly, carried with her the cage and the bird, the flagon of golden water, and the branch of the singing tree, and as she descended the mountain threw a little of the water on every black stone, which was changed immediately into a man. And as she did not miss one stone, all the horses, both of the princess her brothers, and of the other gentlemen, resumed their natural forms. She instantly recognized Bahman and Perviz as they did her, and ran to embrace her. She returned their embraces and expressed her amazement. "What do you here, my dear brothers?" said she. They told her they had been asleep. "Yes," she replied, "and if it had not been for me, perhaps you might have slept till the day of judgment. Do not you remember that you came to fetch the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the yellow water? And did you not see, as you came along, the place covered with black stones? Look and see if there be any now. The gentlemen and their horses who surround us, and you yourselves, were these black stones. If you desire to know how this wonder was performed," continued she, showing the pitcher, which she set down at the foot of the mountain, having no further use for it, "it was done by the virtue of the water which was in this pitcher, with which I sprinkled every stone. After I had made the speaking bird, which you see in this cage, my slave, by his directions I found out the singing tree, a branch of which I now have in my hand, and the yellow water, which this flagon is filled with. But being still unwilling to return without taking you with me, I constrained the bird by the power I had over him to afford me the means. He told me where to find this pitcher, and the use I was to make of it." The Princes Bahman and Perviz learned by this relation the obligation they had to the princess their sister, as did all the other gentlemen who were collected around, and expressed to the princess that far from envying her happiness in the conquest she had made, and which they had all aspired to, they thought they could not any otherwise acknowledge the favor she had done them, or better express their gratitude to her for restoring them to life again, than by declaring themselves all her slaves, and that they were ready to obey her in whatever she should command. "Gentlemen," replied the princess, "if you had given any attention to my words, you might have observed that I had no other intention in what I have done than to recover my brothers. Therefore, if you have received any benefit, you owe me no obligation, and I have no further share in your compliment than your politeness towards me, for which I return you my thanks. In other respects, I regard each of you individually as free as you were before your misfortunes, and I rejoice with you all the happiness which has accrued to you by my means. Let us, however, stay no longer in a place where we have nothing to detain us, but mount our horses and return to our respective homes." The princess took her horse, which stood in the place where she had left him. Before she mounted, Prince Bahman desired her to give him the cage to carry. "Brother," replied the princess, "the bird is my slave, and I will carry him myself. If you will take the pains to carry the branch of the singing tree, there it is. Only hold the cage while I get on horseback." When she had mounted her horse, and Prince Bahman had given her the cage, she turned about and said to Prince Perviz, "I leave the flagon of golden water to your care, if it will not be too much trouble for you to carry it." Prince Perviz took charge of it with pleasure. When Bahman, Perviz, and all the gentlemen had mounted their horses, the princess waited for some of them to lead the way. The two princes paid that compliment to the gentlemen, and they again to the princess, who, finding that none of them would accept the honor, but that it was reserved for her, addressed herself to them and said, "Gentlemen, I expect that some of you should lead the way." To which one who was nearest to her, in the name of the rest, replied, "Madam, we were ignorant of the respect due to your sex, yet after what you have done for us there is no deference we will not willingly pay to you. Notwithstanding your modesty, we entreat you no longer to deprive us of the happiness of following you." "Gentlemen," said the princess, "I do not deserve the honor you do me, and accept it only because you desire it." At the same time she led the way, and the two princes and the gentlemen followed. The illustrious company called upon the dervish as they passed to thank him for his reception and wholesome advice, which they had all found to be sincere. But he was dead, whether of old age or because he was no longer necessary to show the way to the obtaining the 3 rarities which the Princess Parizade had secured, did not appear. They pursued their route, but lessened in their numbers every day. The gentlemen who, as we said before, had come from different countries, after severally repeating their obligations to the princess and her brothers, took leave of them one after another as they approached the road they had come. As soon as the princess reached home, she placed the cage in the garden, and the bird no sooner began to warble than he was surrounded by nightingales, chaffinches, larks, linnets, goldfinches, and every species of birds of the country. And the branch of the singing tree was no sooner set in the midst of the parterre, a little distance from the house, than it took root, and in a short time became a large tree, the leaves of which gave as harmonious a concert as those of the tree from which it was gathered. A large basin of beautiful marble was placed in the garden, and when it was finished, the princess poured into it all the yellow water from the flagon, which instantly increased and swelled so much that it soon reached up to the edges of the basin, and afterwards formed in the middle a fountain 20 feet high, which fell again into the basin perpetually without running over. The report of these wonders was presently spread abroad, and as the gates of the house and those of the gardens were shut to nobody, a great number of people came to admire them. Some days after, when the Princes Bahman and Perviz had recovered from the fatigue of their journey, they resumed their former way of living, and as their usual diversion was hunting, they mounted their horses and went for the first time since their return, not to their own domain, but 2 or 3 leagues from their house. As they pursued their sport, the Emperor of Persia came in pursuit of game upon the same ground. When they perceived by the number of horsemen in different places that he would soon be up, they resolved to discontinue their chase and retire to avoid encountering him. But in the very road they took, they chanced to meet him, in so narrow a way that they could not retreat without being seen. In their surprise, they had only time to alight and prostrate themselves before the Emperor, without lifting up their heads to look at him. The Emperor, who saw they were as well mounted and dressed as if they had belonged to his court, had the curiosity to see their faces. He stopped and commanded them to rise. The princes rose up and stood before him with an easy and graceful air, accompanied with respectful, modest countenances. The Emperor took some time to view them before he spoke, and after he had admired their good air and mien, asked them who they were and where they lived. "Sir," said Prince Bahman, "we are the sons of the late intendant of your Majesty's gardens, and live in a house which he built a little before he died, till we should be fit to serve your Majesty, and ask of you some employ when opportunity offered." "By what I perceive," replied the Emperor, "you love hunting." "Sir," replied Prince Bahman, "it is our common exercise, and what none of your Majesty's subjects who intend to bear arms in your armies ought, according to the ancient custom of the kingdom, to neglect." The Emperor, charmed with so prudent an answer, said, "Since it is so, I should be glad to see your expertness in the chase. Choose your own game." The princes mounted their horses again and followed the Emperor, but had not gone far before they saw many wild beasts together. Prince Bahman chose a lion, and Prince Perviz a bear, and pursued them with so much intrepidity that the Emperor was surprised. They came up with their game nearly at the same time, and darted their javelins with so much skill and address that they pierced, the one the lion and the other the bear, so effectually that the Emperor saw them fall one after the other. Immediately afterwards Prince Bahman pursued another bear, and Prince Perviz another lion, and killed them in a short time, and would have beaten out for fresh game, but the Emperor would not let them, and sent them to come to him. When they approached, he said, "If I would have given you leave, you would have soon destroyed all my game, but it is not that which I would preserve, but your persons, for I am so well assured your bravery may one time or other be serviceable to me, that from this moment your lives will always be dear to me." The Emperor, in short, conceived so great a kindness for the 2 princes that he invited them immediately to make him a visit, to which Prince Bahman replied, "Your Majesty does us an honor we do not deserve, and we beg you will excuse us." The Emperor, who could not comprehend what reason the princes could have to refuse this token of his favor, pressed them to tell him why they excused themselves. Sir, said Prince Bahman, we have a sister younger than ourselves, with whom we live in such perfect union that we undertake nothing before we consult her, nor she anything without asking our advice. I commend your brotherly affection, answered the Emperor. Consult your sister, meet me here tomorrow, and give me an answer. End of section 11. Recording by Beth Blakely.